Hello and welcome back to another episode of Red State Blues. This is your host, Ben, here with Melanie.
Hey there.
That's Red State Blues, the formerly Ben and Melanie show. We are sometimes political and sometimes not. I think that, I was thinking about the name change when we did that, a year or two ago or whatever. I think people think that we got, really, really, really political, but we're not just, all politics all the time, I feel like. Anyway, we do talk about other things, but unfortunately we watch the news like everybody else, and we talk about things that we watch in the news. Unfortunately, during election year, like this year, the news is primarily just covering politics, it seems like, and how everything relates to politics.
Yep.
So, yeah, we just wanted to do another episode, really, to talk about everything, I guess election related, it seems like, at this point.
Yeah.
I think that I myself am pretty afraid. I mean, I guess I'm pretty afraid that Trump's going to win at this point, because I'm of the belief that he's going to declare victory no matter what.
Yeah.
Anyway, we watched a TED Talk about that earlier. I can't think of who actually gave the TED Talk. It was about authoritarianism and how, the majority of the world's residents, almost really at this point, live under some sort of authoritarian regime. And that's a choice, kind of, because a lot of times authoritarians, become authoritarians by getting elected. And then once they're elected, then they're in, and like Putin, for example, that's just an example, but he was elected originally, and now that he slowly moved, and maybe that was his plan. I believe it's probably his plan all along, but moved over to where now he just has direct control over the state and everything everybody says in that state. Yeah, the guy who did the TED Talk was Kevin Douglas Grant, it looks like. Yeah.
And he runs the groundtruthproject.org. Another thing that was really interesting that he brought up is how in previous regimes, people of that party that maybe didn't agree with the extremist person would go along with it to ride the excitement in their party, and then figured that they would just sideline the person once they got elected, and then that never happens. I think that is a good point.
Yeah. Basically what he was saying was there's examples of, in the 1930s in Europe, of Finland, and I can't think of the other country, where they had a far-right party that was coming to power. And then what happened was, in Finland, for example, is the center-right knocked them down a peg and allied with the left to stop them.
Right.
And that actually benefited that country. And then there's other countries like Italy and Germany where the far right rose to power. The center right thought they could ride their coattails and be in those powerful positions. Then that obviously went disastrously. In Italy they got Mussolini, and and then obviously Hitler in Germany, and they didn't share power once they got it with their center right colleagues.
Yep.
That ended.
And I think that's a big mistake that some of the Republican Party people are making right now. They are siding with Trump, trying to ride his coattails, and
some of them. I mean, I think the majority.
Yeah,
that's how he has a chance.
I think there's 4 or 5 people left that are not doing that, but I think that that's a bad idea, because I think that everyone knows that Trump has an ego the size of the world, and he is not going to give up any power once he gets it.
No, he's not big into sharing, I don't think.
No, he wasn't taught to share as a child, you can tell.
No. That's for sure. Yeah.
He needs to go back to preschool.
Yeah, probably he does, actually. He just start over for him.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if there's reincarnation when he dies, he'll get to learn how to actually. This is an example of how being born into extreme wealth is kind of a curse, isn't it? So it's like he's like a half soulless, a half man. He drinks unicorn blood, like Voldemort. Anyway,
I think the more money you have, the less conscious, the less empathy you have. I think that we've talked about that before on the podcast.
yeah, it does seem to do that to people. I think there's been like lottery winners and stuff like that too that have even like not everybody, but some people. It's a good example is like the Lord of the Rings trilogy, which I am just a huge nerd for that. But like I feel like becoming a billionaire or something like that is becoming in effect having the ability to mold the world. Yep. And it's like the One Ring. And like if you get the One Ring, you can mold the world. Like if Gandalf took it or Galadriel in Fellowship of the Ring, they could change the world however they wanted it to be. But then ultimately, that ultimate power, power would corrupt them, and they would become the thing they sought to destroy. Yep. So they couldn't, and that's sort of like I feel like what it's like to become a billionaire for large percentages of the population. There's always examples, I'm sure, that prove me wrong, but I feel like that's extreme wealth. It fucks with people's brains or something, and they can't handle it, and they think that they're doing good somehow. Like Elon Musk thinks he's doing tons of good, but in reality he's not necessarily doing all the good things that he thinks he's doing. He's kind of doing some horrible things too, and by giving a voice to people that maybe shouldn't have it, I think mainly. And that's anyway interesting. Sorry, that's a whole other side. That's a tangent.
It's a related tangent.
But that's kind of related, I guess. But,
because that's what's going on with the.
It feels like that's why Trump is the way he is. Yeah. He has no sense. He just does whatever he has to do, like the people want. Anyway, I've been going down the center. I want to call it maybe the center right rabbit hole lately. It doesn't mean that I am now a center rightist. I definitely I feel most akin to Bernie Sanders. So that's not center right. I definitely consider myself to be a socialist in that sense, but a democratic socialist. Like I believe people should just have certain fundamental rights, like a right to healthcare, a right to shelter, a right to food, basic things. And that's how I feel very much. Bernie Sanders has the right idea. I feel like his perspective is completely lost in this election, largely from what I've seen. It's just all about personality and whether somebody's old or whatever. Like, we're not even talking about policy at all. Like, I mean, maybe we never do. I don't know. Maybe in America, it's just policy. It just goes out the window, and it's all just about big personalities with big, crazy thing, not ideas, just however they act, But I feel myself most akin to Bernie Sanders' vision of what the country should be. And related to that, I did listen to his book a while back, and I thought on audiobook, and I thought it was great. I really it just makes me want to double down on just supporting him. I know he's never going to be president, but just supporting his vision. Anyway, and I've been following him through podcasts, obviously, and I listen to a lot of podcasts, and kind of like he was mentioning in his book that he was actually spent a few years, at least when he was in college and stuff like that, on a kibbutz in Israel. I thought that was actually really interesting. This relates to the Israel-Palestine thing, I think, a bit. Now, he is 100% supportive of ending the war in Gaza and stopping attacking, Gazans. And I honestly would be too. But I just can't help but think that, a lot of people from this country, some of our best minds, are connected to Israel, and some of the best people. And I just really think that we need to consider that when there's people, yelling to really anti-Semitic slurs at some of the protests that have happened in the last few months since October 7th. It's just like, come on, man. That's just, there's no place for that, I don't think, anyway, in this country. Regardless of whether you agree or disagree with anything that the government of Israel is doing, you just can't. There's no place for anti-Semitism. And that actually, if anything, I think that's driven me to search out more center-right voices myself. Because it's kind of disgusted me with the far left, frankly. Just how that has, not with Bernie Sanders, of course, and not with anything about policy, but really about what I've seen happen at these college campuses that Bill Maher keeps harping on, which he's kind of full of shit a lot of the time. But on this one, I think he's kind of right. Like some of the things that have been said at some of these protests are just insane and ridiculous. And maybe, I don't know, maybe there are people that have been paid to go in there to undermine their movement. Yeah. But like that's a possibility. And I normally am 100% behind protests, movements. 100%. I was 100,000,000% behind Black Lives Matter. When that was going full tilt, I was I wish I could have like joined the Occupy Wall Street movement when that was happening way back. Mm-hmm. I was a big believer in that, and and I really was a big believer in like changing the class structure of our society, which that obviously never happened and probably will never happen. But then I also wish, I really was a big supporter of the Arab Spring. That did not pan out at all well, but I was a huge supporter of it. Maybe it panned out for a couple countries. I don't know, Tunisia maybe or something. But like it didn't pan out that well. But it was the hope of a big change and against authoritarianism in the early 11s, or 20 teens there. Yeah, but anyway, so I've always been a huge fan of protests, movements, and to change the world and stuff like that. I just don't see how this one just really bothers me. When you're attacking a minority group, I know there's like two different minority groups here. Then like you're kind of like, it's almost like people have given this kind of binary choice or something where you have to choose. It's kind of, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
I am going to interject here because I watched some interviews of some of the kids that were in the protest. They didn't even know the history of the area, when it was formed, anything really about it other than they were supposed to hate Israel.
Yeah.
The problem is here with a lot of this is people jump bandwagons to try and be, going with the flow of everything and not really understanding what's going on. And why I think this has affected you personally so much is because you spent a large portion of your education studying this area of the world. And I think that you know the backstory a little bit more than the average person, and I think that that's why you find this horrifying. Also, I think that our generation in school had it pounded into us about the Holocaust and about how wrong that was, and we even were like how authoritarians come to power and how all the atrocities that happened, and that it wasn't just Jewish people that were killed, but the Polish people, all kinds of people were killed during the Holocaust. And anti-Semitism is like the worst evil you can commit, right? And then here we are approaching over middle age.
Yeah.
And here we are watching this happen, and I think it's very upsetting. And I would like to say that I personally, I think what happened is a terrorist attack.
Yes,
Basically,
yes.
It's a terrorist attack. Yes. And any country that has a terrorist attack like that
is going to
have to respond.
It was their version of September 11th.
Basically.
And they're going to have to do something.
The biggest thing for me on this is the atrocities against women. This largely fell on women. And
correct.
I just feel that I don't like any of it.
I've watched too many. I haven't actually I'm refusing actually to watch videos that the terrorists made because they made many videos themselves. But I have seen. I will watch interviews with hostages, former hostages, who have escaped, and the horrificness of it, especially if you're a woman, is kind of you just look it up for yourself. That's all I can say. I don't really want to talk about it on here actually that much, but it's just horrific,
There's violence against women.
Yeah, it's hatred almost really towards specifically women. It's just what the fuck? I'd rather just be shot.
Because
so if it was me, you know what I mean? It's Jesus.
The quote there about raping,
not Jesus,
raping the women is raping the nation. That What's Her Toes made on her interview there is really a good expression of what happened, because if you do that, you're messing with the family, the marriages, the children, because moms are the basis of everything, really. They hold the home together, and if things are not good in the home of the mom, we all know what that's like in the home when the mom's not happy. Nobody's happy, right? So it's sort of like that on a grander scale, and I think that it's the way to destabilize.
It didn't do anything other than like completely make the country completely band together. I mean, that's the truth of it too. Is whether you agree with whether Israel should exist or not, and there's a lot of people apparently in the United States that think that Israel shouldn't exist as a country. It doesn't matter. It's going to exist. It does exist. It's not going anywhere. We need to work within that framework.
Yep.
I mean, to think that you could just get rid of Israel is the same as thinking you could just get rid of Michigan. Michigan is just as much a settler state as Israel. Of course it is. Does that mean somebody should come into some Michigan town and kill 1,700 people randomly and rape them and murder them? You know what I mean? Okay, let's say Native Americans, should just come in and like butcher them. I mean, no. It doesn't mean that Michigan was created through violence. A lot of bad things did happen in the past, but we can't live in that place. Right? I mean, am I wrong about that? Like, we can't live 200 years ago. For us, this is obviously a settler country, a colonizer country. Like that's how this country was founded. But just because of that doesn't make everything this country has done evil. That's I guess my point. And just Israel, that's one of the arguments I see being used against Israel is that it was a settlement, that it's a settler country, like a settlement of the West.
They aren't colonizers. That's not what happened.
But that's what I'm saying. Even it doesn't make everything they're doing evil.
But you need to make that very clear. Israel wasn't a colonizer country.
Well,
that needs to be made clear because a lot of people think that the Palestine is the Indian reservation of the Middle East, and it's not.
That's not the case. I agree with you there. It was a British mandate. It started in the 40s, right? They gave the land to the Jewish people essentially, right? And the state of Israel was created in 1948. Mm-hmm. But you could argue that the Romans kicked the Jews out 2,000 years ago, and then dysphoria happened. The Jews had to travel all over the world, all over Europe. They never had a home. They moved they were in Spain, they were in Eastern Europe most recently. They've moved around. They were in the Mediterranean. They were all over in Africa. They were in Iran. They were all over the Middle East. Huge populations in Baghdad. Huge populations all over the Middle East. In the 20th century, they have been forced out of all of those places into one place, Israel, mostly. Outside of the United States, that is. The United States is like one of the places where they're allowed to be. And they're a big, integral part of our history here. We should never, ever, ever change that. And so, like, that's something that I guess I'm reading more and more things. I know we're way just kind of going off here, but reading more and more about that, and I think you need to recognize that history as well. That that is their traditional ancestral homeland from thousands of years ago, that they never got to go back to until after World War II, essentially. I'm not saying that everything they did that happened there was right at all. Not saying that land or whatever wasn't taken. It was, I'm sure, but it's been taken on both sides and then given back and then blah, blah, blah. Like Israel controlled Gaza right up until 15 years ago. They gave it to Gazans already. And then like Gaza used it like this. They used it to commit a terrorist attack. And it wasn't Gaza really. It was Hamas, the government of Gaza, essentially.
Hamas got elected. Like Let's get that clear. Hamas got elected and then chose to become the oppressor. They're trying to become the oppressor.
It's not as clear cut as just like, let's just say this. It's not as clear cut as you're right. Just the Israelis are the white people and the Palestinians are the brown people. Like that, I think that's like that's a narrative that's really in a lot of universities now, and like it's just like, so the brown people are good and the white people are bad. But like if you look at there's only like a few million Jewish people in the world, and like there's over 1 billion Muslims. Like this is not like a situation where the Jews are not the majority encroaching on the minority here. Like this is not, they're not, the people who live in Palestine are not part of a minority, like endangered species or something. There's not like a shortage of people of the Islamic faith. I know like all of the stuff I'm saying could be taken out of context, and if I was actually anybody who mattered, probably it would be, but I really do believe though that like the Jewish people have a right to have a home, and that's just I'm not going to really budge on that. And that's anyway. I don't know what you think. I know that's actually kind of controversial, though, probably among many at this point. So
The other thing I think is interesting is that right before this happened, Israel was making compacts. There was going to be more peace around trade and
yes,
things.
correct.
With
Right
the
before
other
this
Muslim
happened, they were
countries.
making an alliance with Saudi Arabia, I believe, and Jordan, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, they were coming into maybe becoming a more permanent fixture, put it that way, in the neighborhood. And like
This
some of the bigger powers with big alliances with the West, anyway, like Saudi Arabia, for example, which is authoritarian, and I don't condone anything they do really, but like they were making pretty historic trade negotiations, I guess, and stuff like that with Israel right before this.
and then this
So,
happened.
who would benefit from this all going awry?
Yeah.
You know, you have to look at who benefits. To quote the Big Lebowski, to quote to quote V.I. Lenin, I am the walrus. No, it's just anyway. No, to quote though, John Goodman's character in the Big Lebowski. Yeah. Anyway. So yeah, no. You gotta look at who benefits. Who would benefit? Who could pay Palestinian terrorists? Who could pay Hamas terrorists a whole bunch of money, to go in there and murder people? And there are countries that would benefit from this. One way of very clearly benefiting from this, not countries, individuals who would benefit from this. This is a huge conspiracy theory. Russia would definitely benefit from that. Russia would definitely benefit from ripping apart the American left and making it impossible for Biden to win the next election, who is like their adversary, and putting Trump in, who essentially is their stooge. And that has basically happened at this point. Like the left side of the American left electorate or whatever is like ripped in half right now between those who support Palestine and those who don't, as I see it anyway at this point. And now it's a disaster. And so there's tons of people that may not vote for Biden. They may not vote at all, but they might not vote for Biden. And that's another vote essentially for Trump if you're not going to vote for Biden. You know what I mean?
Which is
that will
essentially
benefit him.
vote for authoritarianism.
That's essentially a vote for an authoritarian, which is in Putin's best interest, in his mind, in Russia's best interest, and also very much in China's best interest. So in a way, I almost feel like it wouldn't be that surprising if someday, 20 years from now or something, if they found this information out and linked it all up. This is a crazy conspiracy theory at this point, but I mean, it's just, I feel like it's worth saying on our podcast that's listened to by nobody anyway, to get it out there. I just feel like that's like, you just have to look at who would benefit from these, and there's people in the United States who would benefit from this, who are going to benefit from this, who probably already have benefited. People on the right. Like, I wouldn't be listening to Barry Weiss and stuff as much. I'm listening to Barry Weiss more and reading her stuff a lot more because of this that I never even want to give credence to. And I am as far left as it gets in many circles, I would think. Pretty far left. I'm like a Sanders supporter. But I'm now reading, stuff on the center right. It's just like, whoa,
I want to mention who would benefit in the Middle East of destabilizing that relationship.
Nobody. They're the victims. All of them.
You think
They're
so?
fucked. They would only benefit from Israel having allies and trade relations with other Middle Eastern major powers. Only goes to benefit all of them more and enrich all of them more. It enriches Israelis more, manufacturing and technology companies, and it enriches the Saudi Arabians for having better ties with Israel. It just makes them all better off and makes the war of a less chance. Actually, I mean, if you just want to have less stabilization, have war there. It hurts everybody. This war in Israel and Palestine just hurts everybody. There, it doesn't benefit anybody. There's maybe from what I've read, yeah, like the United Arab Emirates. Right, there's a big theory or whatever about like maybe Qatar, like the United Arab, like they would benefit Some I'm not even sure how they would benefit, but that doesn't even, I don't know what
That
I'm
doesn't
not
make
as
sense.
familiar with their situation. They have a lot of oil wealth, and they do a lot of trade. But I don't with the
This
United States, I'm sure,
benefits
but like
Russia again too, twice, because
mostly Russia. Yeah,
it also having a war here distracts from his war and what he's doing in the Ukraine.
it benefits authoritarian regimes. It just benefit. Let's just see.
Yeah.
I don't see how it benefits any Western countries. I don't really see how it benefits any Middle Eastern countries, frankly, other than just making their situation messier because it's right next door to them, you know. And like it really just benefits authoritarian regimes like China and Russia that are very far removed. They're solidifying their alliance with each other. They're solidifying their alliances. Like Russia just made Putin made a visit to North Korea. Is that correct? That's
Yep.
insane. That's historic.
And they made a
Like that's
compact.
the key. So now there's no chance that regime's going to fail, ever. Like I think we were just kind of hoping it would fall on its own weight one of these days. If we didn't have to, we could just like, give it a little shove and the thing would just topple. But now they're like not going anywhere. Putin just damned those people to another fucking 50th century, God knows how long, of hell. I would hate to be born in that society, to live in like it'd be like a hellscape.
Yeah.
Urban hellscape, basically. So from everything I've seen, but anyway, yeah, no, they're not going anywhere now, and that's really sad. Anyway, so it benefits countries like that. Like there's almost like this big wall of authoritarian regimes that are starting to form like an old alliance, almost like the Warsaw Pact or something. And I think if that, like Putin was thinking, if he could just take over Ukraine, he could install a dictator there too, and that'd be just another step. And then they would have, they obviously already have, what is it, Belarus. They have that. They have Ukraine. Then the next step beyond that, I believe, would be Poland. Then he would kind of get back where he used to be in his mind, or well, where the Soviet Union used to be. But anyway, I actually, man, I really, really, really don't like any of that either because it's not even under the illusion. At least during the Soviet Union times, they were under the illusion that they were doing good. Like communism, they were pretending. I'm not sure how many of them really believed it, but at least regular people believed it. Maybe, you know, like that. Hey, we are actually doing something good for the common man. We're giving everybody food and shelter, for example. Instead, Putin is just essentially a bunch of thugs,
Yep.
just enriching themselves. That's oligarchy. So it's not even. God.
And there's whispers that even in his own circles that people are thinking he's pretty much went too far and he's crazy.
Yeah, I think I've read that too,
That
but
he's
I don't
lost
see
his
anybody being able to stop them.
Nope.
Not there. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So that's really something that I think that I just had to get out after reading. Like I said, I'm really a big fan of becoming a big fan of the free press now. And that's done by, well, apparently, I guess was started by Barry Weiss a few years ago, like 2021 or something like that, after she, like, famously quit the New York Times. I do feel like, I watched an interview that she did with Jerry Seinfeld, and I thought it was actually really well done, and it really kind of, you know, that I'm just actually, I'm a little awestruck that at the lack of, lack of empathy that a lot of people have, I think, for the Israeli people actually too.
Yep.
And actually maybe even for people on both sides, how it's kind of being used as political football too. But yeah. So anyway, I've been watching and reading podcasts or listening to podcasts too, and yeah, there's some pretty good content out there. I'm not like a huge fan of some of these sort of centrists, I guess, but I think that maybe they're really the key. I guess by centrists I mean like Bill Maher and Barry Weiss and Sam Harris kind of all fall into this category. I don't agree with their politics a lot of the time. But I do agree that they can be what people on the right need to not vote for Donald Trump. Like if people on the right could start listening to their stuff, they're like anti-Trump people who are sort of centrists. You know what I mean? So they're about rationality more, I feel like. And against authoritarianism, you know, stuff like that. And I feel like that's sort of the key there to beating Trump. I think the other key is to kind of have people be obviously the main key is to have people be not as miserable as possible. So having them have food, shelter, health care, things like that, reasons why they would not want to vote for a fascist, which unfortunately this country has a bad habit of not being able to do very well. And we have a very good habit of letting people down after making promises. So politicians have that tendency. They'll make big promises and then stuff doesn't really materialize. But yeah, no one should have to suffer in a first world country because they can't pay for freaking medical insurance. That's something that's, I feel like, being lost in this whole election cycle. Like, no one's talking about anything that actually matters. Stuff like that, like homelessness and things like that. But whatever.
Because people are either pro-Trump in his mythology line, or they are talking about Palestine and Israel. But the middle part is saying we need to vote for democracy, whatever that means. We need to vote for the person that's going to keep the democracy in, so that we still have a choice in the future.
Yeah,
once they get past that,
then
we can actually talk about the policies we need to make again.
If we have authoritarianism,
right now we can't.
Yeah, if you vote for Trump, you're like voting for not having a choice next time.
Yep.
Like you're voting that Trump gets elected, and then we don't have any more actual elections anymore. Then you know what? That's just going to be it. Then what if he decides to go full left or full right or whatever? It's just going to be up to his whim.
Yeah.
Just whatever. He can snap his fingers and make it happen. Right? You want to build a new freeway? There you go. It'll happen. I mean, there's effective things about that system. Like there isn't maybe as many homeless people in some authoritarian countries as there is here.
Are they killing them? That's the question.
Who knows? But anyway, that's my crazy rant. I just I get really worked up about it. But yeah, I guess the other thing I want to talk about. Let's do you care if we dramatically change subjects now?
You can turn
that was my crazy half-hour long or our crazy half-hour long political rant update. That's like 6 months of pent up, listening to podcasts or something. I definitely needed to get this out more. That's for sure. But anyway, the other thing I've been listening to and following the case of Amanda Knox. And for those of you who don't know who she is, she was tried and convicted of murder in Italy in 2007. She got very, very famous. She was a college student, American college student, who was just like there doing, I don't know, or you're abroad or whatever it was. And I watched, after listening to her interview with Sam Harris on his podcast, I was very impressed with her, actually, because then I found out she has her own podcast. They made a documentary about her, and I want to say 2017. It's tragic because there's no way that she did it. She did not kill this. They accused her. The Italian police accused her of killing her roommate in some sort of crazy sex game, which apparently was completely fabricated. But her problem really was more of a public relations problem, because when she was walking around famously way back then, the tabloids got obsessed with her. I don't know, probably because she was just a cute 21-year-old or whatever it was. And they got obsessed with her, and they followed her around, and she made the mistake of smiling at the camera, famously. Well, she was walking into court in Italy or something like that, or walking out of court, and oh my God, every single person on the planet thought she was guilty as hell. And that she thought she was a spoiled brat, she was going to get away with it or something like that. And that destroyed her life, apparently. They did convict her. She went to prison, and I don't think she went for that long. She got out, what was it, so it was time served or something like that. She got back to the United States now. She got out in 2015 or something like that. She did not do it, though. That's the tragedy of it, is that they actually had another guy come forward and admit to doing it. He was just a thief who like broke into their apartment and murdered her roommate. It was not some twisted, crazy sex game like the prosecution said it was. They like fabricated this whole big, huge ass story, and then like had her in jail and like forced her to sign it basically under duress. And anyway, so recently she got in the news again because she went back to Italy and was trying to get her. They also let me think. They accused her of slander and convicted her of slander, and she was trying to of slander of saying that her former boss, under duress, did the murder, and while she was in jail there, and then so her. I don't know if her boss was going after her, but the state of Italy was going after her, and so like they. She went back to Italy to try to get that conviction overturned because it didn't work. As it turns out, she lost, and they're still saying that she's a slanderer. Anyway, the whole thing is incredibly tragic. A miscarriage of justice, so to speak. My heart goes out to her. I have known multiple people over the years who have become entangled with the justice system, so to speak. And I'm not going to name names, of course, or anything like that, but it's like, in my opinion, justice is not really, there is no such thing as a justice system. It's more about it's more of a lawyer system. It's how good your lawyer is. And also, among other things, how much money you have. Really is what it's based on. How many connections you have, probably. That's just my opinion. I know multiple people who have been entangled with the justice system. Yeah, and I just feel like that's, and this is America. I don't know anything about the Italian justice system, but I just feel like justice systems all over the world maybe have the same problem, where they have to find somebody who's guilty, like somebody must be guilty. If there's a crime, somebody's guilty of it. There can't just be nobody. So a lot of times, many times, and I'm sure this is probably worse, and again, authoritarian regimes, not that Italy is an authoritarian regime, but it's probably much worse there because you really don't have a right to appeal.
Right.
I guess that'd be the good thing about a Western democracy is at least you have the right to appeal. Anyway, yeah, even here, if you're in the wrong place, wrong time, you're fucked.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't matter. It can happen so easily. Can happen to anybody. I don't think people who have not been on the wrong end of that system understand that. Anybody involved with any of it knows that very well. But if you don't, and you believe in good and right and how the world should work and things like that, you're just, if you end up in that system, you're in for a really rude awakening really quick. That it does not give a flying fuck about you. And that's just, Anyway, I just think that her case is actually a little bit of a cautionary tale, but I'm not really sure what you would do. I'm not saying that anybody would do anything different under the circumstances. So, I'm not really saying that. It's good to be aware to not say anything unless you have a lawyer present. I guess that would be the main lesson.
Yep.
Do not say anything.
And overcome your Midwestern values, and how you have to smile at everyone to be nice is a bad thing if you're on trial.
Yeah,
do not smile.
And I think she's from Washington or something. But yes, she's American.
Yeah,
it's an American value.
Cultural thing.
It's a cultural thing here. To smile at everybody. That's what we do. We're a smiley culture. We love to smile. That's great, but not when you're in that situation. But that didn't even that. Just get a lawyer too, man. Don't try to save yourself from yourself or whatever. They used every single thing she said against her, to her detriment. It was awful. It was just, man.
Watch the documentary.
Watch the documentary. It's great. Listen to her podcast. Her and her husband have a podcast. They have a baby. They're doing relatively well, other than she lost this case. But other than that, I think they're doing really. She's doing great, all things considered. Anyway, so she definitely has a podcast worth subscribing to. And also her interview with Sam Harris is amazing. In fact, I think she does some. Sam Harris also has an app which I have not subscribed to, but he has some kind of meditation app, and I think that she. There's a talk on there about I want to say it's like perseverance or the ability to overcome insurmountable odds, even though every single thing in your life it seems like it's went wrong. It doesn't necessarily mean that it did. It doesn't mean that tomorrow is going to be like that, I should say. It's a very Buddhist way of looking at the world, I think. But like if something bad happens, there's very likely that something good could come of it, and vice versa. Something good could happen, and something very bad could come of it. Yeah, like that's so it's like not, things are never what they seem, a lot of the time, and you just should just kind of stick to the middle, really, and that's the Buddhist idea, I think, anyway, the middle way, right? But anyway, that I really highly recommend looking into her for anybody listening. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to add today. That was really the main stuff, just my crazy ass political rant. I want to talk about Amanda Knox, and
there were so many things that literally cannot fit it in this amount of
time. I feel like if we started talking about another subject, it could end up going for hours, and we have a limited amount of time. So to get away from our kids to be able to do this. So thanks so much for listening. Everybody who is listening to this, we really appreciate it. I am, and Melanie is very much tempted. Actually, Melanie has her own blog, and she actually just changed it over to Substack. It's a very old blog.
Yeah.
But like that's where I was headed with this, was like that we were talking about maybe starting a Red State Blues Substack column. And I'm not sure if it should be weekly or as much time as we have into it. Just kind of about like our perspective from life in the middle of the mitten,
Yeah. I think it would be good because it's not that we would love to podcast every single day if we could, because we love it, but we have limited time, and so if we supplement the in between the podcast with the Substack, I think that'd be great. The other thing we wanted to talk about, just really quick, this is really quick so we can end on time here, is that recently in the Mitten, talk about Michigan, we have noticed that some of our little local towns here are getting kind of touristified. They're getting new shops that you would never see in a rural area that sell boba tea. And
I'm actually 100% cool with this. I think it's great.
And artisanal
I'm actually
cheese.
Surprised. Yeah, I'm actually, I'm really, really happy. It is, like, diametrically opposed to what I want to say what life was like here 20 years ago or so.
Yes, definitely.
I'm like, oh my God. I don't think there's people necessarily coming from outside of the area as tourists so much, but it's like it's a local tourism kind of thing. And I think it's pretty great. And I just think that it's great the economy's doing better. I think there's been a slight population increase in some counties. I actually looked at the census information, and some of the mid counties have actually had a slight. But I think the people are trying to get away from, have been since 2020, trying to move a little bit away from cities or a little bit further, and that actually has brought some new interest in small town life, which is kind of great. It's actually really refreshing. So
yes, it is.
I think you're right about that. It's like the more the merrier. So anyway. I'm not against gentrification in all situations. I think that like some places could really use it. So, but I think in some other cases maybe not as much. But
as long as it's peppered, it's not like they've redone the entire downtown of these small towns and
it's not like
kicked out all the poor
bulldozing
people.
everything for a development or something.
Yeah.
but I mean,
it's just one
a lot of
artisanal
times
cheese shop.
it really brings in some much needed. Newer ideas and things. So that's pretty awesome. Yep. All right. Go ahead. Yep.
One more thing.
Yep.
The other thing we wanted to say is Happy Juneteenth.
Oh, God. Yeah, I didn't think I mentioned that.
Yeah, you were going to start with
that.
that.
Oh, my God. I was going to start with that. I would be I'm horribly remiss for not even saying that. Yes, it is Juneteenth, and the date of recording this, anyway. And that is the day that the slaves were, it wasn't really the day the slaves were freed, but it was the day that the furthest flung Texas colony or
Galveston,
whatever areas
Texas.
got the information that the slaves actually were free, and that's like it's finally when all of the slaves got free.
Yep.
Officially. So that's what this holiday is celebrating. For those of you who are not aware, go to the Wikipedia page on it, obviously. But yeah, very, very important. Probably long overdue that we've made it a national holiday. I mean, obviously, this is not the first one. This is like the second or something at this point. But yeah, it's pretty great that we are doing that as well. So. All right, we got to wrap it up, though.
All right.
I see that, yep, we're running out of time. But thanks a lot for tuning in.
And
appreciate it.
Keep posted on our Facebook page. I will let you know when we start the Substack there. I will include a link.
All right.
All right.
Bama P. Guavaman.